I stood in the shadows of my own kitchen, holding my breath as I watched my son creep into the hallway like a thief in an expensive suit. He thought he was planting the evidence that would destroy me, but he didn't know his 9-year-old daughter was watching from behind the sofa. That moment of betrayal was the match that burned our family to the ground. "Grandma, I don't feel so good. Can I stay home today?" I can still hear her little voice trembling that morning. Lily was only 9 years old, and when she asked me, she looked up with those big, bright eyes that always melted my heart. I touched her forehead. It was a little warm, yes, but nothing alarming. I thought it was just exhaustion. "Of course, sweetie. You stay. I'll make you some peppermint tea and dry toast," I replied. I didn't know that such a simple decision would change my life forever. The day started out calm. The sun was streaming through the curtains, and the house smelled like fresh bread. I was humming an old song while I watered the plants on the balcony. Lily was playing in the hallway with her dolls, wrapping them in tiny blankets and telling them to rest, just like her. Everything seemed so normal, so innocent. But calm has a cruel way of breaking. It was close to noon when I heard a faint creak, the front door opening slowly. I peeked out from the kitchen, but I didn't see anyone. I thought maybe it was the wind. I never imagined my own son was crossing that threshold with the intention of ruining me. But before I continue, I want to extend a very special invitation to you. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories, and comment down below which city you are watching us from. Now, let's continue. According to what Lily told me later, it all happened in silence. She heard footsteps in the hallway and hid behind the sofa. From there, she saw him, my son Daniel, dressed in his usual suit, briefcase in one hand and phone glued to his ear. He walked in without knocking, as if the house were still his. He looked around cautiously and walked straight to the coat rack where my gray coat was hanging. Lily remembers her breathing became so soft she almost fainted. He opened the inside pocket of the coat and slipped something inside, a small package wrapped in clear plastic. Then, looking over his shoulder, he murmured into the phone, "It's done. Call the police tonight. She won't suspect a thing." My granddaughter didn't understand what she was hearing, but she knew it was something bad. She waited for him to leave, holding back tears. As soon as the door closed, she ran to her room and hid under the covers. I came back from the garden minutes later, hands dirty with soil and a smile that didn't know what was coming. "Lily?" I called out. She didn't answer. I found her in her bed, white as a sheet. I thought her fever had gone up. I stroked her forehead, but she wasn't hot. What she was terrified. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked her. She just said, "Nothing, Grandma." And she closed her eyes. Hours passed. I made soup, tidied up the living room, checked my plants, but something in the air felt different. A tension, a metallic smell, a bad feeling. Sometimes mothers know when something doesn't fit, even if no one says a word. That night, when I was about to hang up my coat, I noticed it was heavier than usual. I reached into the pocket and felt the package. I didn't open it. Something stopped me. It was like an inner voice telling me, "Don't touch it, not yet." At that moment, the phone rang. It was Daniel. His voice sounded sweet, rehearsed. "Mom, just calling to see if you're okay." "Yes, son, of course. Why wouldn't I be?" There was a brief silence on the other end. "I don't know. I just wanted to hear your voice," he laughed. "Sometimes I miss you. I don't remember what I answered. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just hung up." But as the disconnect tone filled the air, an idea started to grow in my chest. Slow, dark, like a shadow spreading. Daniel didn't call me without a reason. Daniel never did anything without a reason. And that night, When the rain started pounding against the windows and the clock struck 11, I heard what I never thought I would hear in my life. Banging on the door and a voice shouting, "Police!" Lily ran to me crying. I hugged her tight, not understanding. And as the officers entered with flashlights, I could only think of one thing: the weight of the coat hanging on the rack. What was inside, whatever it was, wasn't mine anymore. It was proof of a crime I didn't yet understand, and the perfect trap set by the son I had raised. The police searched my house for nearly an hour. I will never forget the metallic sound of their flashlights clicking, the heavy footsteps on my waxed floor, the constant murmuring between them, as if they already knew what they were going to find. I was sitting on the sofa, hands trembling on my knees. Lily watched me from the stairs with wide eyes and held back tears. "Can you explain this, Mrs. Miller?" one of the officers asked, holding the envelope they had found in my coat. I swallowed hard. "I don't know what that is," I said with a weak voice. "Someone must have put it there." The officer looked at me with a mix of suspicion and pity. "They always say that," his partner muttered. When they opened the package, a silver shine flooded the room. It was a gold pendant with blue diamonds, so glittering it seemed to be mocking me. I recognized it immediately. It had been on all the news channels for days. The stolen jewel from the Harrington family home, one of the most powerful families in the city. I lost my breath. I knew there was no possible explanation. That jewel condemned me without the need for words. After checking every room, one of the officers said they would come back with a warrant to take me in for a statement. When they closed the door behind them, silence fell like a tombstone. Lily came running down the stairs and clung to me. "Grandma, it was Daddy," she whispered between sobs. "What did you say?" I asked, pulling her away gently to look into her eyes. "I saw him, this morning. He came in without knocking. He put something in your coat and talked on the phone. He said—" I felt the ground vanishing beneath my feet. For a few seconds, I didn't know whether to cry or scream. "My son. My own son." "Are you sure, honey?" I asked with a trembling voice. "Yes, Grandma. I swear." I hugged her so tight I could barely breathe. In her trembling little body, I found the only truth I had left. I didn't sleep that night. Every shadow seemed like a threat. Every noise, an omen. I thought about Daniel and his wife, Rachel. That woman who had always looked at me with disdain, as if I were an old, useless burden. I remembered the times she insisted I leave the house to the young ones, the silent arguments, the rejections disguised as smiles. And suddenly, everything clicked. My house, my bank account, my reputation. It was all part of the same plan. I got out of bed, turned on the lamp, and took the coat. I observed it carefully. It was an expensive coat, a gift from Daniel for my birthday last year. "So you don't get cold, Mom," he had said then. But now I understood it had also been a gift with a lock included. I checked the pockets carefully. Besides the pendant, there was something else at the bottom, a small piece of folded paper. I took it out and opened it with shaking hands. There was an address written in his handwriting: 42 Briarwood Lane, Unit 5, 11 p.m. And a single underlined word: delivery. My heart was pounding in my chest as if it wanted to warn me, but my mind, colder than ever, began to thread the facts together. If Daniel had used me as bait, that address could be the meeting point where he planned to close his deal, and if that was the case, I wasn't going to let him do it at the cost of my name. I went to the phone, dialed his number. He answered on the third ring. "Mom," he said with fake sweetness, "are you okay?" "Perfectly," I replied. "I wanted to thank you for the coat." There was a tense silence. "What do you mean?" Nothing, son. I just wanted you to know it fits me very well. Are you insinuating something? No, just that soon there will be others who want to try it on too. I hung up before he could answer. I knew he would understand the message, and I also knew he would go to that address. Daniel couldn't stand feeling exposed. He was going to show up to control everything. He always did. I spent the rest of the night writing a letter, not for the police, but for Lily. I explained to her that whatever happened, she had to tell the truth. I told her that love sometimes hurts more when it comes from the wrong blood, and that it didn't matter what others said. An honest woman doesn't let herself be crushed, not even if they drag her to the ground. When I finished, I put the letter in her school backpack. Then I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't see a scared old woman. I saw a wounded mother who had decided to stop crying. The clock struck 11:15. I took my coat, the very one that was going to destroy my life, and left for the address on the paper. Outside, the night smelled like wet earth and betrayal. Every step I took resonated like an ancient echo of all the times I stayed silent. No more, because if my son had turned me into his trap, I was about to turn into his punishment. The address written on that paper burned in my pocket like a hot iron. I walked through streets I already knew, but that night they seemed foreign to me. The city seemed to be watching me with cold eyes. I arrived at Briarwood Lane when the clock marked 10:30. In front of unit number 5, there was a sign with the metal shutter half down. From the sidewalk, I saw 2 men under an umbrella speaking in whispers, and the sound of their voices reached me from afar. I stayed to watch, hidden behind a planter. My heart was beating hard. At 68 years old, I never imagined having the pulse of a conspirator, but something in me no longer obeyed the logic of fear. If Daniel planned to use me, I planned to use the truth. I waited. It didn't take long for the man I recognized from the news to arrive, a luxury item broker, known online for managing stolen pieces, carrying a backpack on his shoulder and a calculating look. He spoke with the 2 men under the umbrella in a low tone, pointing to the unit and his watch. Meanwhile, my phone vibrated. It was a message from a neighbor. "Are you okay? I saw the police go by your house a while ago." My stomach tied into a knot. Was the police already at the house? It wasn't possible, I thought. Had someone followed me? I decided to move with more caution. In the distance, I saw a black car pull up. Daniel got out of the vehicle with a determined step, adjusting his coat. He looked toward the unit. He spoke with someone through the glass and then disappeared down the street. My legs trembled. There was the confirmation. My son, the one who had smiled at me on so many birthdays, playing a role I didn't know. Something occurred to me suddenly, and I felt a stab of cold anger. I had to record. I took out the small recorder I always carried in my purse, an old habit from the days when I worked in radio. And without raising suspicion, I got close enough to capture what was being said there. My body seemed to function on impulse, rage converted into discipline. I peered through the crack in the gate and saw the broker enter with the backpack. A second later, Daniel appeared, followed by a woman I didn't expect. I saw her out of the corner of my eye, and her hairstyle struck me as that kind of elegance that buys impunity. I heard a sentence that froze my blood. "I checked last night that the coat fit well. Tomorrow, the report." The voice was Daniel's. The woman laughed softly. "Perfect. No one will think to take her home if she gets arrested." Everything fit together like cruel machinery. I felt all my past crumbling, and yet a part of me expanded. I had found the evidence I needed. I didn't want to wait any longer. I went back home as fast as my legs allowed me, with the recorder pressed against my chest. When I entered through the front door, I didn't smell detergent or soup. It smelled like formaldehyde, the smell of nerves. The living room was darker, and in the hallway, 2 police officers were waiting for me. Their faces were kind, but in their eyes there was a professional coldness. "Mrs. Miller, we're going to need you to come with us to the station for some additional statements," the taller officer said with a measured voice. I went with them without complaining. In the police car, Silence was a third passenger who wouldn't stop watching. I felt Lily's gaze on the back of my neck. I imagined her small body in bed, her trembling hands. I didn't want the image of her father arrested to be what defined her childhood, and yet I knew that sometimes truth is a hard service to those who come after. At the station, they gave me the typical plastic cup and the same table as always. They asked me to tell what I knew, and I repeated everything. Daniel's visit, what Lily saw, the coat, the address. I added that I had been on the street and what I had heard. The interrogation was formal, with pauses and papers that someone leafed through distractedly. When I finished, the senior officer looked at me with a mix of respect and strangeness. "We have to verify your version," he said, "and we would have to check the street cameras. We would also like to hear the recording if you have it." I nodded, and with hands that weren't shaking so much anymore, I took the recorder out of my purse and offered it. They took it carefully and promised to use it. They asked me questions about my assets, about my relationship with Daniel. With every answer, I felt an invisible web tightening. I told them my only intention was to protect my granddaughter and my name. They took notes. Then they let me go back home to wait. But I wouldn't back down. The truth was guiding me now. When I walked back through the door, I saw Daniel in the living room, with his shirt unbuttoned and a tired expression. His eyes met mine, and for an instant I thought everything could be resolved. But his look held no remorse, only calculation. Lily hugged me and sobbed. "Grandma, will you forgive me if I told everything?" I stroked her hair and replied that she had done the right thing. I felt, for the first time, the weight of a decision that wasn't sadness or joy, but justice. The following hours were full of movement. Officers checking the route, neighbors giving statements, the usual deployment when the city wants answers. Daniel tried to sustain his version with the same serenity with which he had put the coat on the rack, but his voice had cracks that the recording had already captured, and I was no longer the same woman as before. There was something awake inside me, a certainty that wouldn't let me fall back into the silence others used as a weapon. I never knew at what moment I lost my son. Sometimes I think I lost him long before his ambition was born. Maybe it was the day I stopped correcting him for fear of hurting him, or when I defended him in front of everyone because I believed a son should feel loved, not questioned. What irony. I loved him so much, I made him untouchable. And the untouchables end up believing they are gods. When Daniel was little, he had the brightest smile I have ever seen on a child. He liked fixing old clocks with me, taking them apart piece by piece until seeing the heart of time. He always said, "Look, Mom, clocks only stop when you stop wanting to fix them." I melted with pride. I never imagined that obsession with fixing everything would transform one day into a sick need to control everyone. As a teenager, he was a genius in his studies, the pride of the school. The teachers congratulated me, and I smiled, but behind that smile, cracks were starting to form. Daniel couldn't stand losing, not even in a game. If someone surpassed him, he humiliated them. If something went wrong, he blamed someone else. And I always excused him. He just has a strong character, I would say. I didn't see the danger of my own words. Years passed, and the sweetness of the boy turned into the coldness of a man. When he got his first job at the bank, he brought me flowers. "Mom, I made it thanks to you," he told me, hugging me. But in his eyes, there was something I didn't understand then. A shadow that wasn't exhaustion, but arrogance. It was there that he met Rachel, his wife, an elegant, calculating woman with that smile of ice that is only learned in places where love is used as a tool. From the first day, she looked at me as if I were an intruder in her new world. I tried to please her. I cooked her favorite dishes, gave her gifts, looked after Lily when they went out. But it was never enough. Her look said it all. I was extra. And Daniel, my Daniel, was no longer my son when he was with her. He was a stranger who spoke with a boss's tone, who corrected me in front of my granddaughter, who counted bills with the same fingers that as a child repaired clocks. The son who once swore to protect me now spoke to me as if I were a weight to carry. And even so, I loved him. After my statement at the station, Daniel came to see me. He entered without saying hello, eyes red with rage. "What did you do, Mom?" he shouted at me. "You went to the police. Do you have any idea of the damage you can cause?" "To whom, Daniel? To you or to the truth?" He froze. "You don't know what you're saying. You're confused." "I am more lucid than ever," I replied calmly. "I know you put that package in my coat. Lily saw you." The silence that followed was more violent than any blow. For years I had hoped he would contradict me, that he would deny it, that he would say it was a mistake, but he didn't. He just took a deep breath. He got close to me and said, "You always ruin everything. You couldn't keep your life in order, not even when Dad left." "Your father left me, Daniel." "No," he corrected. "He left because he couldn't stand your weakness, and now neither can I." His words went through me like knives. I looked at him, but I didn't see my son anymore. I saw the man I had raised to love me and ended up despising what I represent, the truth he wanted to erase. When he left, I found a card from the bank where he worked in his jacket. On the back, there was a note with numbers and a date. I called an old friend, Teresa, who still worked there. That night, in a low voice, she confirmed what I feared. My account had been emptied 3 days earlier. The transfers carried Daniel's signature. He had forged my authorization. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Crying didn't serve any purpose anymore. Crying is a way of asking. And I wasn't asking for anything anymore. That early morning, I wrote in my diary, "When a son betrays his mother, it's not just love that breaks. The line between the human and the monstrous breaks, and the monster has my last name." The next morning, while I was making breakfast, Lily came in wearing her floral robe. "Grandma, I dreamt Daddy asked for your forgiveness," she told me. I smiled with bitter tenderness. "Some dreams are just wishes in disguise, my love." She hugged me and whispered, "I don't want you to go to jail." "I won't, little one. Promise?" "I promise." The promise came out like a sentence, because I knew that to keep it, I would have to do something I never imagined capable of doing, converting a mother's love into the weapon of her own salvation. That afternoon, I began to plan. I went to the attic, took out my late husband's old video camera and placed it on a cabinet, pointing at the living room. I recorded my voice saying, "Today is Monday. My son Daniel Miller has stolen from me. He has tried to frame me and plans to sell my house. If something happens to me, this recording will be my testimony." I put the tape in a safe and wrote the combination on a paper I hid inside Lily's storybook. No one would look there. As night fell, the phone rang. It was Rachel. Her tone was sweet, almost maternal. "Susan, don't worry about Daniel. He is very nervous, but everything will be fixed." "Fixed?" I repeated. "How?" "We're going to sell the house. With the money, we can pay the lawyers and clear your name." "Your name? Not his." I didn't answer. I just hung up. I looked out the window and saw her car parked in front of the house, engine running. I knew Daniel was there, waiting for me, watching me. And I knew that if I didn't act soon, my story would end where he had planned, in a cell. But no, my story wouldn't end with bars. It would end with justice. And justice, this time, was going to have a mother's face. When a mother reaches the point of not recognizing her son, she has no fear left. Only strategy. That night, while the clock struck 3:30, I understood that justice wouldn't arrive if I stayed waiting. At my age, time isn't an ally. Time is a rope that gets shorter, and I didn't plan to die with a knot around my neck. I spent the whole early morning reviewing old notebooks, receipts, photographs. I was looking for something that connected all the threads Daniel had left loose. Among the folders in the closet, I found bank statements signed with my name and stamped with his boss's signature, a fake stamp. I also found copies of emails he himself had printed and kept, messages between him and a woman named Isabel Grant, bank security manager. The phrases were brief, coded, but clear. The movement happens Monday. She doesn't suspect. Close the account after. There I had it, the proof of his crime. Not only had he used me, but he had done it with help from the inside. But before I continue, I want to extend a very special invitation to you. Tell me here in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in my place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you goosebumps. The next morning, I made coffee and waited for my neighbor Martha to drop off the bread, like she did every day. Martha was one of those women who know more than they appear. She had worked for years as a secretary at the precinct, and although she was retired, she still had contacts. "You look terrible, Susan," she told me as soon as she saw me. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt me a single time. When I finished, she just said, "We need proof and luck." I showed her the papers, the emails, and the bank address. She reviewed them with an expert gaze and told me, "I could get you the security camera footage from your street. If Daniel entered that day, we'll see him, but I need a favor." "Whatever you want. Don't do anything until I have them." I nodded, although I already knew I wouldn't keep that promise. That night, I prepared the house. I discreetly placed the old video camera behind a curtain pointing at the living room sofa. I also left the gray coat on the rack, the same one Daniel had used to frame me. I didn't wash it. I didn't touch it. I knew that, if he returned, he would go straight for that coat. It was his trophy. I lit a candle next to my late husband's portrait and spoke to him in a low voice. "I don't know if you can hear me, Charles, but I need strength. Today, I'm not fighting for me, but for the girl, for our Lily." The wind hit the windows with fury. Everything seemed like a scene written for the end, but it wasn't the end yet. It was the beginning of my revenge. At 10 at night, Daniel called me. "Mom, I want to talk to you." "Come over," I replied without hesitating. "Alone?" "I always am." I hung up before he responded. Martha, from her house, knew what was happening. I had promised her that, if I didn't reply to her message in an hour, she would call the police. I got ready and waited. The sound of the doorbell shook my soul. Daniel entered with his rehearsed smile, that one that used to melt everyone, but now only gave me chills. "Mom, we have to fix this," he said. "Fix what, son? My ruin or your conscience?" "Please, don't start with your dramas. The police are confused." "I can talk to them, make them drop the charges." "In exchange for what?" I asked, pouring tea without looking at him. "That you sign the sale of the house. That way, everything stays in the family." I laughed softly. "Of course. And then you'll let me die in peace, right?" Daniel frowned. "Don't talk like that. I don't want to hurt you." "You already did, son, but you can still fix it." I pointed to the sofa. Sit down. We have a lot to talk about. I turned on the recorder I had hidden under the table. The small click went unnoticed amidst the sound of the rain. We talked for over half an hour. I feigned weakness. I talked to him about childhood, about the clock we fixed together, about how lonely I felt since his father died. He relaxed. Little by little, the mask fell. He told me about his debts, about the loan he had asked from dangerous people, about how he needed to sell the house to save his future, until he said something that cut off my air. Don't look at me like that, Mom. Everyone does it. Dad would have done it too if he were still alive. Your father would have never stolen. Oh, really? He replied with a twisted smile. Then you don't know who helped him with his businesses when he got into debt. What are you saying? That you signed the first papers, Mom, only you never realized it. The silence was brutal. I froze. I didn't know if he was lying or if there was something I myself had forgotten, but it didn't matter. The son I had raised was using my memories like knives. You have become your worst version, Daniel, I told him. He stood up abruptly. You don't understand. I just want to get ahead, and if you don't cooperate, someone will get hurt. He left the house, slamming the door. The cup of tea remained untouched, still steaming. Martha arrived shortly after. She had gotten the camera recordings. You could clearly see Daniel entering my house the day of the robbery. She saved them on a flash drive and handed it to me. This sinks him, she said. No, Martha. This is just starting. I put the drive next to the recording of our conversation. I had the necessary pieces, but I was still missing the final move. I looked at the hallway clock. The hands seemed more alive than ever. The tick-tock reminded me of the boy who said clocks only stop when one stops wanting to fix them. I smiled with sadness. Maybe he was right, but now I didn't want to fix it. I wanted to stop it. That night, the wind blew hard, and the branches of the orange tree hit the dining room glass as if warning what was about to happen. I had made tea, the same one Daniel loved as a child, and turned on the low lamp in the corner. The house was in semi-darkness. Only the tick-tock of the clock and the murmur of the storm accompanied my breathing. I knew he would come. Men like my son can't stand not having the last word. And he came. The sound of his car stopped in front of the house, just like an old memory returning with firm steps. His shadow projected onto the door before he rang the bell. I let him wait a few seconds. It was important he understood he no longer had control. When he entered, his expensive cologne filled the air. I looked at him. Black suit, white shirt, that same impenetrable look he had inherited from his father. Can I come in? He asked with that courtesy that always hurt me. The door was already open, I replied. He crossed the threshold, closed behind him, and smiled half-heartedly. Mom, you're making a mistake. About what, Daniel? In raising you, or in trusting you? He sighed. You don't understand things as they are. Not everything is so simple. Explain it to me then, I said, pouring the tea. I invited him to sit, and he did. Every gesture of his was an echo of his childhood. The way he moved his fingers, the way he arched an eyebrow when he felt safe. For an instant, I saw the boy he was, and then I lost him again. Do you know what bothers me the most? He said with feigned calm. That you think I did it out of malice? And it wasn't like that? No, Mom. I did it out of necessity. Necessity for what? To destroy the one who gave you life? His eyes hardened. To save myself. He took the cup. Debts, pressures, threats, things you would never understand. You could have asked for help? From you? He laughed with contempt. You don't know how to help. You only know how to judge." That laugh was the final blow to my compassion. For a moment, I wanted to get up, leave, lock the door, and let him sink alone. But I couldn't. I still had to listen to him. I still had to record him. The camera behind the curtain was registering every word. "And the jewel?" I asked. "Was that also part of your pressures?" He lowered his gaze, then raised it slowly. "I had no choice. They offered it to me in exchange for settling what I owed. If you got implicated, the deal closed." "So you sold me?" "Don't be melodramatic. No one was going to hurt you. We just needed time." "We?" "Isabel and I." The name fell between us like broken glass. Isabel, the bank manager, the woman from the emails, the accomplice. "So it was true," I murmured. "Yes," he said without blinking. "She was the only one who understood me. She didn't look at me like a failure. She didn't look at you like a son. She used you, just like you used me." Daniel set down the cup, trembling slightly. "You don't know what it is to live with fear." "Fear?" I asked with a low voice. "I have lived with fear all my life, Daniel. Fear that you would become what you are now." He stood up, nervous. "Enough. This is useless." "Sit down," I ordered him. My tone surprised him. He had never heard that from me, and he obeyed. For the first time in years, he obeyed. During a long silence, only the rain was heard. I pretended to look at the window, but I was watching his reflection. The face I had loved, the one I had kissed as a child, now looked at me with a coldness that knew no limits. "Tell me the truth, Daniel," I whispered. "Did you also plan the money thing?" He hesitated. Then he nodded. "Yes, but it wasn't all my idea." "Isabel's? Her boss's?" He looked me in the eye. "There are powerful people behind all this. And even so, you chose me. You were the easiest piece to move." "No one suspects an old widow." That phrase was his sentence. "You were the easiest piece to move." I leaned forward. "Tell me something, son. When you were little and a clock broke, what did you do?" "I fixed it," he replied, not understanding. "Well, this time, the clock is you, and your time is up." I took the remote control and turned on the television. On the screen appeared the image recorded by the bank's security camera, courtesy of Martha. Daniel entering with the jewel in his hand. Daniel leaving my house the day of the robbery. Daniel talking to Isabel in the parking lot. His face crumbled. "What is this?" "The truth," I said. "The only one you never learned to look at." He screamed at me to turn it off, that it didn't prove anything, that he could explain it. I just watched him, impassive, while tears burned inside me. "You know what hurts more than losing a son," I told him, "discovering he was never yours, that you only raised him to serve his own ego." "Shut up!" he screamed, hitting the table. "You don't understand anything." "I understand everything, Daniel. That's why I recorded you." He froze. He looked around, searching for the camera. And then he saw it, the red blinking behind the curtain. He tried to approach, but it was too late. In that instant, the phone rang. I answered. It was Martha. "Susan, everything is ready," she said. "I already handed the copies to the precinct." Daniel snatched the phone from me and threw it on the floor. "You don't know what you did," he roared. "Yes, I do. I saved you, even if you don't deserve it." He stood still, his eyes filled with tears. "Why, Mom? Why didn't you let me continue?" "Because I had already lost you once," I said, "and this time I wasn't going to lose myself with you." He left the house without looking back. His silhouette got lost in the rain. I didn't know if he would return. I just stayed there, in the silence, with the recorder still on, his words resonating like a cursed echo. "You were the easiest piece to move." For the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes and prayed that justice, the real one, not the courts, would find its way. The hallway clock struck midnight, and I, with my soul in pieces, knew that the next time I heard banging on the door, it wouldn't be my son on the other side. I didn't sleep that night. The silence was so heavy it felt like a punishment. Every tick of the clock was a heartbeat of the soul reminding me what I had done and what was still to come. I had handed over the proof. I had sealed my son's fate. And yet, a part of me kept wishing, with a stupid hope, that it was all a bad dream. I sat by the window, watching the rain wash the streets. The car lights reflected in the puddles like ghosts coming and going. I thought about Daniel, about the boy who once hugged me to fall asleep, about the young man who promised to make me proud, and I wondered at what exact moment the love twisted. Was it my fault, or did the world swallow him while I looked the other way? At 5 a.m, the phone rang. It was Martha. "Susan?" Her voice sounded shaky. "They're going to act today. They have an arrest warrant." I stayed silent. "Today?" "Yes, don't worry. Everything is in order. The evidence is sufficient." "Where?" "At his house. At 8. I closed my eyes. My soul weighed so much I could barely breathe. I had wanted justice, but in that moment I only felt emptiness. Justice, when it touches blood, doesn't feel like a triumph anymore. It feels like mutilation. At 7:30, I dressed slowly. I chose a dark dress, a simple coat. Lily was still sleeping. I left her a note on the table. "I love you, my baby girl. Today things will get difficult, but remember, the truth is not the enemy. The enemy is fear." I took the umbrella and went out into the rain. The city was wrapped in a gray mist that smelled of sleeplessness. Every step brought me closer to the end of something, and the beginning of something I couldn't name. When I arrived at Daniel's house, the patrol cars were already parked in front of the entrance. 2 agents were waiting for instructions. Martha, from her car, gave me a gesture of support. I remained standing in front of the gate, motionless. The cold soaked my bones, but I didn't move. At 8 o'clock sharp, the door opened. Daniel came out with his phone in his hand, talking to someone. He was wearing his gray suit, the one he used to impress the world. When he saw the agents, he stopped, confused. "What's going on here?" he asked. The operation chief approached. "Daniel Miller, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery of documents, and obstruction of justice." Daniel laughed with disbelief. "This must be a joke. Who sent you?" "Your mother," the officer replied with a firm voice. The world seemed to stop. His eyes searched for me in the crowd. When he found me, his expression changed from bewilderment to pure hatred. "It was you?" he said, taking a step toward me. "I had to do it," I whispered. "You're a traitor, my own mother." "I am your mother, yes," I replied. "And that's why I did what you never had the courage to do, face the truth." The officers grabbed him by the arms. Daniel resisted, screamed, cursed. I remained motionless. Every word of his was a stone thrown at my chest, but I wouldn't back down anymore. Suddenly, the house door opened and Lily appeared in the doorway. She had messy hair, pajamas still on. "Daddy!" she screamed. Time stopped again. Daniel turned toward her. For an instant, the monster disappeared and the father returned. His eyes softened. My life. Don't listen to anyone, okay? I didn't do anything wrong. The innocent's broken, he said. But I saw you, Daddy. He froze. The agents took the opportunity to put him in the car. The door slam resonated like a sentence. When the car drove off, the rain started falling harder. I stayed by the fence, soaked, tears mixing with the water. Martha approached and hugged me without saying a word. The whole world seemed to keep silence out of respect for a mother's pain. Lily ran to me and hugged my legs. Is Daddy coming back? She asked. I breathed deeply. Someday, maybe. Is he mad at you? Yes, but someday he'll understand. And if he doesn't understand, then we'll have to forgive him ourselves. Hours passed. At the precinct, everything was a parade of signatures and statements. Daniel denied it at first, but the evidence was irrefutable. The recording, the emails, the transfers, the bank video. He tried to blame Isabel, but she had also been arrested that morning. The two sank together, like two castaways tied by ambition. When the judge dictated pre-trial detention, I felt like my heart was being ripped out and returned empty. Justice had arrived, but the price was devastating. Before taking him away, Daniel asked to see me. I accepted. They left us 5 minutes in a small room with cold walls and the smell of old coffee. He was handcuffed, but maintained his haughty posture. Do you feel better now? He asked. No, I replied, but at least I can look at you without lies. Do you hate me? No, son. I don't know how to hate you. Then, why? Because I preferred losing you alive than burying you dead on the inside. Daniel looked away. Dad would have hated you for this too. I don't think so. Of course he would, he said bitterly. You never knew how to understand him, and you never knew how to love me, I whispered. The guard opened the door. Daniel stood up and before leaving, said without looking at me, Someday you'll regret it. I already do, son, I replied, since the day I stopped correcting you for fear of losing you. When the door closed, I felt my soul splitting in two. I wanted to cry, but I had no tears, only a deep, ancient exhaustion that weighed more than any sadness. That night, I returned home with Lily. The girl didn't ask much. She sat next to me on the sofa and fell asleep with her head on my lap. I looked at her sleeping face and thought that was my true miracle, that innocence could still exist amidst so much darkness. I got up carefully, covered her with a blanket, and walked to the balcony. The rain had stopped. The sky showed a timid glow between the clouds. I lit a candle and left it on the railing, not as a symbol of mourning, but of hope. A humble, old hope, but alive. Martha came to see me the next day. She had the newspaper under her arm. On the front page it read, Financial fraud ring falls. Mother delivers evidence against her own son. You became a heroine without meaning to, she said, smiling sadly. There are no heroes here, Martha, only victims. Sometimes the truth saves too. Sometimes, I replied, but it always hurts. That night, while writing in my diary, I heard Lily's voice from her room. Grandma? Yes, my love? Are you scared too? Yes, a little. And what do you do when you're scared? I smiled. I breathe, I close my eyes and remember that the truth belongs to me. And if the truth makes you cry, then I cry until it stops hurting. The girl stayed silent. Minutes later, I heard her murmur, I believe you too, Grandma. I covered my mouth to hold back the sob. I never knew if I was crying from pain or relief, maybe both. During the following days, The house filled with journalists, lawyers, calls. I rejected all interviews. I didn't want fame or pity. I just wanted peace. One afternoon, I received a letter from the prison. It was from Daniel. I opened it with shaking hands. There was only one sentence written in his handwriting. Sometimes I think about the clocks we used to fix together. Maybe this one can be repaired too. I closed the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't answer it. A mother's love is still there, but now it's a small, silent flame. It doesn't burn anymore. It only illuminates what is necessary. That night, I went out to the garden. The wind moved the branches of the orange tree, and for an instant I thought I heard Charles' voice, my late husband. "It's done, Susan. You did good." I looked at the sky and let the cold air caress my face. Justice had arrived. Yes, but it didn't bring peace. It brought learning. And at my age, learning hurts more than guilt. I returned to the living room. I turned off the lights and observed the hallway clock. The same clock Daniel used to fix as a child. The hands turned with a soft, constant sound. I touched it with my fingers and murmured, "Time didn't stop, son, but this time it won't be me who fixes it." I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the sunrise. 6 months have passed since that night. 6 months since I saw my son handcuffed in the rain, while my granddaughter cried in my arms, and the clock marked the end of a story I never imagined living. And although life has run its course, inside me time doesn't move the same. It remains stopped on that image, Daniel looking at me with hatred and fear at the same time. Two emotions so human, it hurts to admit I once called him my pride. Sometimes, while I sweep the patio or water the plants, I think that justice isn't a clean act. It has a price paid in sleepless nights, in memories one would prefer to forget, in the innocent look of a girl who asks you why love looks so much like punishment. Lily has grown a lot in these months. She no longer asks for her father every day. Only sometimes, when the wind blows hard, she says, "Grandma, today it smells like rain, like that night." I nod and we change the subject. Because some wounds don't heal by talking, they heal by living. The bank returned part of the money. Justice dictated a firm sentence. Daniel and his accomplice, Isabel Grant, sentenced to 10 years in prison for fraud and forgery. Though many call me brave, I don't feel that way. There is no bravery in destroying who you once loved, only necessity. With the recovered money, I bought a small house on the outskirts, a little white house with a garden and orange trees, just like the ones from my childhood. There I live with Lily. Mornings are quiet. I make coffee, open the windows, let the light in. But at night, when silence settles, I discover myself talking to a ghost, not my husband's, but my son's, the Daniel who doesn't exist anymore. One day I received a call from the prison. It was the warden. "Mrs. Miller, your son wants to see you." "Is he okay?" I asked, with my heart shrinking. "He had an incident in the yard with another inmate, but he is stable. He just needs to talk to you." "Why now?" "He says he has something to confess." I hung up the phone and stood still. The word confess sounded like a distant bell, as if destiny had been waiting for me all this time to teach me one last lesson. That night, I barely slept. Dawn found me in front of the mirror, combing my hair with trembling hands. I don't know why, but I wanted to look dignified. Not out of pride, but because forgiveness, when given, must be given standing up. When I arrived at the facility, the guard guided me to the visiting room. The smell of metal and disinfectant was unbearable. The wall clock marked 11:40. The minutes passed slow, as if time also hesitated to witness that meeting. Daniel entered, escorted by an agent. He had shorter hair, a thinner face. His look had changed. It wasn't haughty anymore, but tired. He sat in front of me, separated by the glass of the booth. "Hi, Mom," he said with a hoarse voice. "Hello, son." "I thought you wouldn't come." "I thought so too," I replied. "But here I am." We looked at each other for a long time without speaking. The silence between the two had its own weight. It was the summary of a whole life. Finally, Daniel lowered his eyes. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, "about what I did to you." "And what did you conclude?" "That it wasn't only my fault." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "That I didn't steal just out of ambition. I stole because I was following a plan that wasn't entirely mine." His tone was strange, almost fearful. "Isabel's?" I asked. "No." "Someone else's?" "Who?" "Dad's." I froze. "Your father is dead, Daniel?" "Yes, but before dying, he left things unresolved." He took a folded sheet out of his uniform pocket. "I found this among my things a few days ago, a letter from him. I don't know how it got there." The guard allowed him to show it to me through the glass. The handwriting was unmistakable. That of Charles, my late husband. "Daniel, if you ever need money, look for Isabel Grant. She will know what to do. I owe her a favor. Don't tell your mother anything. She wouldn't understand." The world spun in my head. Charles, my Charles. He had opened the door to all this. Isabel wasn't just Daniel's accomplice. She had been his father's mistress years ago. Everything made a cruel sense, perfect in its tragedy. "I didn't want to believe it at first," said Daniel, holding back tears. "But when I got into trouble, I looked for her, and she told me Dad owed her money that you knew." "No, son," I said with a broken voice. "I didn't know. He lied to me." Then we were both deceived. We stayed looking at each other. For the first time in many years, there was no hatred in his eyes, only sadness. "And what will you do with that now?" I asked. "Nothing," he replied. "It doesn't matter anymore." "It does matter." "No, Mom. I decided my steps. No one forced me to be who I was, but I needed you to know the truth." I clenched my fists on the table. Tears fell without permission. He raised his hand, pressing it against the glass. I did the same, and for an instant our hands touched through the distance. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I forgive you, son, even if I don't deserve it. No one deserves or doesn't deserve forgiveness. It's given because one needs to let go of the pain." Daniel closed his eyes. "Thanks, Mom." "Just promise me something," I said. "That when you get out, you will be different." "I try that every day." We stayed in silence. The guard announced time was up. Daniel stood up. He gave me one last look and they took him away. I stayed there, in front of the glass, with a heavy heart, but, for the first time, at peace. Upon leaving the prison, the sun hit my face with a warmth I had almost forgotten. I breathed deep. I don't know if it was relief or resignation, but I felt something inside me had closed. That afternoon, I returned home. Lily was waiting for me with a drawing. 3 figures holding hands. "It's you, Daddy, and me," she said. "Daddy isn't here, my love," I replied with a sad smile. "But he watches you from over there," she pointed to the sky. I hugged her so tight I feared breaking her. In that hug fit all the silences of the world. Days went back to their routine. We cooked, laughed, watched movies. But every night before sleeping, I lit a candle in front of Charles' portrait, not to pray for him, but to remind myself that secrets are seeds. They can bloom into love or rot into poison. One night, reviewing old boxes, I found the clock Daniel and I had repaired when he was a boy. It was covered in dust, stopped. I cleaned it carefully and, with a screwdriver, tried to make it work. The mechanism clicked and started to beat again. The sound filled the room like a resurrected heart. Then I understood something. Not everything broken needs to disappear. Some things can move again, even if time has punished them. A month later, I received a new letter from the prison. It was short, without drama, without apologies. It just said, "The clock is still running. Thanks for teaching me how to fix it." I smiled. That sentence was more than a metaphor. It was a surrender, a beginning. I went to the garden, where the orange tree was blooming for the first time since we arrived. The air smelled of life. Lily was playing among the leaves, laughing with that joy only children who don't carry a past have. I watched her for a long time and thought that, in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. That she grew up without repeating our story. I raised my eyes to the sky and whispered, "Thank you, God, for giving me the courage to break the silence." Because silence, that monster that accompanied us for years, had its price. And I paid it with tears, with loneliness, with memory, but also with freedom. That night, going to bed, I felt my soul resting. For the first time in a long time, I slept without fear of ghosts. Because I understood that some ghosts don't come to scare us, they come to teach us to forgive. And before closing my eyes, I spoke to the portrait of Daniel when he was a boy, with his bright smile and his clock in his hands. "Time goes on, son, and although your mistakes chain you, you will always be part of my seconds." The clock on the nightstand struck midnight with a firm, serene sound, like a heart reconciled with its past. And in that final silence, I knew my story, our story, had finally arrived at the place where it needed to rest, in truth and in forgiveness. I've learned that life isn't divided into years, but in the moments one dares to speak the truth, because the truth, even if it hurts, liberates. And the silence I kept for so long ended up costing me more than any word ever could. I'm Susan Miller, and this is a fictional story, but the healing in my heart feels real enough to light the way forward.